my career working on issues for Native Americans, indigenous people in Canada and Latin America. And the Pima example is a really good example. On the reservations today, which suffered more than any other population, and the highest COVID death rates in our country, suffer from chronic disease more than any other population. And it's common to call, to characterize as white death, white sugar, white flour, and white Crisco oil, which is ending the genocide of of Native Americans in this country. It's the completion of that genocide. The Pima Indians are actually a perfect natural experiment because on the Mexican side of the border, they're not getting those. And the Pimas there are long-lived. They're slim. They don't have diabetes. And on our side, 90% of them are obese, very short-lived. I think the longevity is something like 47 years, although I have to check that, but very, very close to that. And it's a natural experiment that shows the danger of ultra-processed foods. Dr. Palmer, the mitochondrial disorder affects every organ of the body. And the brain is an organ of the body. And but the brain actually has a lot more difficult job of excreting these kind of toxins than the other organs. Can you talk about that, and also talk about the fact that about 0.5% in recent studies of the American brains are now made up of microplastics. So 0.5% of the weight of our brains are now microplastics, and that's something we should all be worried about.
Yeah, so thank you for the question. The issue of microplastics and nanoplastics in the human body is actually, sadly, in its infancy. We have 2 publications out in the last couple of months demonstrating that microplastics are in fact found in the human brain. And as Dr. Amin said, and you cited, 0.5% of the body weight, or the brain's weight, appears to be composed of microplastics. We need more research to better understand whether these microplastics are in fact associated with harmful conditions, because microplastics are now ubiquitous. So some will argue, well, they're everywhere and everybody's got them and it's just a benign thing. Some will argue that. The most compelling evidence against that is a study published in the New England Journal of Medicine a few months ago now, in which they were doing routine carotid endarterectomies, taking plaque out of people's carotid arteries, just routinely doing that for clinical care. And then they analyzed those plaques for microplastics. 58% of the people had detectable microplastics in the plaques. So they compared this 58% group who had microplastics to the ones who didn't, followed them for 3 years, just 3 years. And the ones who had microplastics had 4 times the mortality. There is strong reason to believe, based on animal data and based on cell biology data, that microplastics are in fact toxic to the human body, to mitochondrial function, to hormone dysregulation and all sorts of things. There are lots of reasons to believe that. But the scientists will say we need more research, we need to better understand whether these microplastics really are associated with higher rates of disease. I think people are terrified of the answer. People are terrified of the answer. And if you think about everything that you consume and how much of it is not wrapped in plastic, all of those industries are going to oppose research. They are going to oppose research funding to figure this out ASAP, because that will be a monumental change to not just the food industry, but our entire economy, imagining just cleaning up the oceans and trying to get this plastic, and then more importantly, trying to figure out how are we going to detox humans? How are we going to deplasticize human beings? How are we going to get these things out? It is an enormous problem, but the reality is putting our heads in the sand is not going to help. And I am really hopeful that by raising issues and letting people know about this health crisis, that maybe we will get answers quickly.
I've got a